So the World Cup Rugby Trophy is taking the India tour, and it's currently in India, and we're delighted to have it in India Today studios in Mumbai. This is the World Cup Rugby Trophy. It'll take a while for an Indian to lift it, but we'll cherish it being in our studios all the same. Joining us is the CEO of World Rugby, Brett Gosper, and Nasir Hussain, former India captain. Brett, good to have you on India Today.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you. Help us understand the magnificence of this trophy. There's always a story behind a trophy. Tell us about the World Cup Rugby Trophy.
Okay, well, interestingly, the first World Cup was 1987, and at that time, they obviously didn't have a World Cup, so they had to find one. Rather than make a specific World Cup for rugby, they actually went to the Queen's Jewellers, into the vaults of the Queen's Jewellers, and found a cup that had been made previously in 1906. And they chose this cup, and it became named the Webb Ellis Trophy after the very first student who picked up a football actually and ran with it at rugby school in 1823. So the name of the cup, the Webb Ellis Cup, and Rugby World Cup from 1987.
And it's quite a story. I mean, if we're told, none of us, neither Brett or me, can touch the trophy, so it belongs. So if you want to lay a hand to it, you need to win the World Cup. That's the idea, right?
That's basically the idea. Unless you're having to put it there, then you need white gloves, and that's it. Yeah.
Right, but Nasir, I mean, you would be delighted to, having represented India and led India in the sport, to see the trophy firsthand and to see it take a tour around the country.
Yeah, it is. It is without a doubt an honor and a privilege for the cup to come to India and to around. This is something all rugby players or all sportsmen aspire to achieve, is the World Cup trophy. And yeah, we're absolutely delighted to have it and showcase it around the country.
Right. The World Cup is actually happening in 2019, so we'll all hope that once we finish celebrating India's victory in the Cricket World Cup, we'll all get together and watch the Rugby World Cup. But Brett, this is the first time it's happening in India, in Asia. Japan's hosting it. That's also a sort of landmark moment of sorts for the sport.
Yeah, that's right. It's the very first time it's gone out of its traditional strong rugby markets in a way, and to come to Asia, to come to Japan for the very first time is historic. We think it's a sign that the sport has globalised over the last period. It will also attract a new audience in Asia, we believe, being on the right time zone and being seen in the context of Asia. At the same time, to people outside of Asia, it will look incredibly international, incredibly global as a new context is given to the Rugby World Cup, and we're all very excited about that.
So what's the key to take to see the expansion of the sport and see it rise beyond the southern hemisphere, where they've been the countries who've sort of dominated the sport over the years?
Yeah, I mean, our mission at World Rugby is to grow the sport in every way, grow participation, but also to grow the number of fans around the world. And of course, the most potential number of fans happen to be in Asia, with populations as they are over here, China and India in particular. And we've seen huge growth in our fan base over the last number of years, and only a Rugby World Cup and an Olympics, because we're an Olympic sport, can really significantly grow our fan base. And our current fan base is about 338 million, and every World Cup and every Olympics grows that by about another 30 million more. Interestingly, India have the third biggest rugby fan base in the world, behind the USA and China at 25 million approximately. So we know there's a lot of fans out here. We just have to feed them more rugby, give them access to more rugby, and help introduce new people in India to the game of rugby.
If I'm not wrong, you also claim that this is the third most watched event outside of FIFA and the Olympics, and the cricket body claims that cricket's the most.
Well, we claim more than that. We claim it's the third biggest event on a number of criteria. Okay. I think cricket's probably right. In absolute numbers, they probably are more watched event because of their penetration in the Indian market. It outweighs everything. I think our footprint is broader. We understand and deeper in a larger number of countries, and our final is seen by an audience like a US Super Bowl. We also sell 2.5 million tickets at the last World Cup, and our World Cup usually creates about 2 billion in economic activity for the country that's hosting it. They're figures that no other event on the planet can match, other than the Olympics and FIFA World Cup.
Nasir, help us understand what a rugby fan who's sort of picking up things about the sport can expect out of the Rugby World Cup, which happens next year. Obviously, the All Blacks, the New Zealand teams is the strongest in terms of the history that they carry, having won the World Cup 3 times. But which are the leading countries? What does one expect?
Firstly, it's fantastic that the sport and the World Cup's coming to Asia. It's a celebration for all of Asia, where all behind Japan to host it, and we're pretty confident that it'll be a fantastic and a very successful tournament. In terms of the competition, and I mean, obviously the likes of New Zealand, South Africa, England would probably go in as favourites. But again, it's on the big stage. It would just depend on the day which teams would perform. I mean, the likes of Ireland, Wales. You never know. It is going to be a very interesting couple of weeks of rugby, and it'll definitely be very exciting as well.
And maybe you can help us, put Indian rugby in context of where it stands and what lies ahead.
So we compete on the Asian circuit. We did go through the qualifying processes for the Rugby World Cup. Still a bit of work to be done on our end to achieve and get to that stage. But having said that, a lot of developments being done across the country, especially at the grassroots and school level. And I think a testament to the work that's being done is the trophy coming to India. 18 countries been selected, and India is one of them. And that would obviously be related to the work that's happening, the potential that there is in the sport and in the country. And we're pretty happy with the progress so far.
Right. So just bringing the trophy to India itself, Brett, some sort of research would have gone into it. The Indian market, how does the world of rugby look at the Indian market, and then of course India as a competitor?
I think it looks at the Indian market as a market with huge potential. As I said, there's a massive fan base out there, people who are interested or very interested in the sport of rugby. We need to ignite that fan base in other ways. We need to have greater visibility for the sport here. We don't believe it's on broadcast and accessible to broadcast as much as we'd like to be, and we'll work hard at that. We also know that it's a very accessible sport for women. We have a mass participation program called Get Into Rugby, and there were 160,000 new players that touched a ball in India last year, which is top 3 in the world. They have 80,000 regular players here. If you get 300,000 or 400,000 as a player base, you can compete on the world stage. There's also the sevens for women and men. That's a much easier, shorter, a bit like T20 is for cricket. The sevens is a smaller, shorter version of the game. Very good entry point for players and spectators, and very quickly a team can be competitive in the Olympics. And we're already seeing the Indian women beating teams like Hong Kong, and it wouldn't be long before they could be knocking at the door of Olympic qualification, maybe in the next couple of cycles. Yeah,
right.
That's possible.
Yeah. If you're just wondering how does he understand T20 cricket, Brett's an Australian in terms of nationality, so he understands the T20 ODI and tests of the world. But that's the whole idea. Good to have both of you with us, gentlemen. The time zones will always be a factor. We'll see if having the World Cup in Japan will attract more Indian audiences. But like I said, we should all try and get together and understand a new sport in a better way. And what better way to sort of, you know that you've seen the World Cup trophy here firsthand. So we'll watch who comes triumphant.